Sofia Reyes moved silently through the gleaming corridors of Westwood Academy of Performing Arts, her mop leaving wet trails across the marble floor. At 32, she wore the gray uniform of the maintenance staff with quiet dignity, her long black hair tucked neatly beneath a simple cap, her movements efficient and unobtrusive. For 2 years, she had navigated these hallowed halls, polishing brass fixtures and emptying trash bins, all while becoming as invisible as the dust she removed from the ornate gold frames holding photographs of famous alumni. The prestigious academy stood as a monument to artistic excellence, its reputation built on producing some of the world's finest violinists, its practice rooms filled with students from wealthy families and elite musical backgrounds. Sofia had grown accustomed to the way the students and faculty looked through her, their gazes sliding past her uniform to focus on someone more important. In the main concert hall, she paused to straighten a music stand before continuing her rounds. Her hands, though roughened by cleaning chemicals, moved with a fluid grace that might have seemed unusual to anyone who bothered to notice. But no one ever did. "Sofia, can you finish the recital hall today? We have the International Strings Competition Committee coming in for a tour," her supervisor called out, barely glancing up from his clipboard. "Yes, Mr. Diaz," she replied softly, steering her cart toward the recital hall with its soaring ceilings and perfect acoustics. As she entered the empty space, Sofia caught sight of the magnificent Stradivarius violin displayed in a glass case near the stage. One of the Academy's prized possessions, used only for special performances and always locked away immediately after. For just a moment, her expression shifted, a whisper of longing crossing her face. In the reflection of the glass case, she saw herself as she once was, 15 years younger, a violin tucked beneath her chin, her future as bright and promising as a new melody. But that was before life had intervened. Before choices made from necessity rather than ambition had set her on a different path. Sofia shook her head slightly and returned to her work. The past was the past. This was her life now, and she had made her peace with it, or so she told herself each morning. Madame Isabelle Laurent strode through the recital hall, her heels striking the hardwood floor with authoritative clicks. At 58, she commanded the Academy's string department with the same precision she had once brought to concert stages across Europe. Her tailored black pantsuits and perfectly coiffed silver hair projected the image she had carefully cultivated. Success, refinement, unquestionable authority. "Those chairs need to be perfectly aligned, not this casual arrangement," she instructed, barely glancing at Sofia. "The committee expects absolute precision." "Yes, Madame Laurent," Sofia replied immediately, moving to adjust the chairs with careful hands. From across the room, Christopher Walsh observed the exchange with barely concealed disdain. As the Academy's star violin instructor and competition coordinator, Christopher had built his reputation on producing competition winners and maintaining exacting standards. "Isabelle, do remind the maintenance staff that they should use the service corridors when the committee arrives," Christopher called out, his voice carrying just enough to ensure Sofia heard. "Last time I noticed several of them in plain sight during the Paganini showcase." Sofia's cheeks warmed, but her hands remained steady as she continued arranging chairs. These small humiliations had become as routine as dusting the trophy cases. Later, as Sofia polished the brass railings along the grand staircase, she paused at the sound of a student struggling through a difficult passage on the violin. Through the partially open door, she could see a young boy, maybe 13, his frustration evident as he repeatedly stumbled over the same measures. Without thinking, Sofia whispered, "Try relaxing your wrist on the spiccato passage." The boy turned, startled, as Christopher appeared behind him. "Did you just try to instruct my student?" Christopher's voice cut through the air like ice. "I'm sorry, You just what? Thought your expertise as a cleaner qualified you to comment on violin technique." Christopher's laugh was sharp. "Please stick to what you know, mops and trash collection." Sofia's eyes dropped to the floor as the door closed firmly in her face. She resumed her polishing, shoulders slightly more hunched than before. What Christopher couldn't see was Sofia's fingers moving imperceptibly against the railing, tracing the notes of the piece the student had been playing, correcting, perfecting, completing the passage in a silent performance that no one would ever witness. The day of the International Strings Competition arrived with a flurry of activity. The Academy gleamed under Sofia's careful attention, every surface polished, every chair perfectly aligned. Violinists from around the world would soon fill these halls, their talents determining which would receive the career-launching opportunities that came with winning such a prestigious event. Sofia worked quietly in the recital hall when Christopher burst through the double doors, phone clutched against his ear, face tight with panic. "What do you mean you're not coming? The opening ceremony starts in an hour." His voice echoed across the polished floor. "Min-ho, you can't possibly." He paused, listening, his expression darkening. "A hand injury today of all days?" As Christopher ended the call, Madame Laurent rushed toward him, sensing disaster. "What's happened?" "Min-ho Park can't perform. He's injured his hand." Madame Laurent's hand flew to her pearl necklace. "But he's our ceremonial performer." The committee specifically requested the Paganini Caprice No. 24 to open the competition. "I know that," Christopher snapped, then lowered his voice. "None of our current students can handle that piece without preparation." Daniel Rivera, a young teaching assistant who had always acknowledged Sofia with simple kindness, a good morning here, a thank you there, approached hesitantly. "Madame Laurent, if I might make a suggestion?" Madame Laurent turned, desperate for solutions. "What is it, Daniel?" He hesitated, then continued, "I've heard someone else play that piece quite brilliantly, actually." "Who?" "Professor Williams is out of town, unless you're suggesting one of the graduate students." "No, actually." Daniel's eyes drifted toward Sofia, who was dusting a nearby display case, seemingly oblivious to their crisis. "I'm suggesting Sofia." The silence that followed was deafening. Christopher recovered first, a laugh bursting from his lips. "The janitor? You can't be serious." "I've heard her playing in the storage room during late hours when she thought the building was empty," Daniel continued, undeterred. "She's remarkable." Madame Laurent and Christopher exchanged incredulous glances before both turning to stare at Sofia, who had now frozen in place, duster suspended in midair. "Is this true?" Madame Laurent demanded. "You play violin?" Sofia lowered the duster slowly, her cheeks coloring. "Yes, ma'am." "And you think you could play Paganini's Caprice No. 24? Christopher's tone made it clear how absurd he found the very suggestion. Sofia hesitated, then met Christopher's eyes directly for perhaps the first time in 2 years. "Yes, sir. I can." Madame Laurent's eyes narrowed as she studied Sofia, seeing her, truly seeing her, for perhaps the first time. "You honestly believe you could perform at our international competition opening?" Sofia stood perfectly still, caught in the unexpected spotlight of their attention. Around them, staff bustled about preparing for the evening, oblivious to the drama unfolding in their midst. "Let me understand this," Christopher interjected, his voice dripping with condescension. "You think you can step in for Min-ho Park, who's been training at elite institutions since he was 4? Sofia's reply was simple. "I know the piece." Dr. Jonathan Blackwell, chairman of the competition committee, approached their small circle, his curiosity piqued by the unusual tension. "What's the problem, Isabel?" "Apparently," Madame Laurent said with an artificial laugh, "our maintenance person believes she can save our opening ceremony." Dr. Blackwell's eyebrows rose slightly as he assessed Sofia, his gaze traveling from her practical shoes to her simple uniform, lingering on her hands that had just been emptying trash bins and polishing surfaces. "Well," he said slowly, a certain gleam appearing in his eyes, "this is certainly unexpected." Christopher leaned closer to Madame Laurent and Dr. Blackwell, lowering his voice, though not enough to prevent Sofia from hearing. "It might actually work to our advantage. We could present it as part of our community outreach efforts. If she's terrible, we make a self-deprecating joke about our desperate situation. If she's passable, we look generous for giving the help a moment in the spotlight." Madame Laurent's expression shifted as she considered the possibilities. "The committee might find it charming, a little novelty before we explain about Min-ho's unfortunate situation." Sofia stood silent, invisible once more as they discussed her as if she were an object, a prop for their performance rather than a person with feelings and dignity. "It's settled then," Madame Laurent announced, turning back to Sofia. "You'll play tonight, one piece, the Paganini." "And if I refuse?" Sofia's question hung in the air, surprising even herself with its boldness. Madame Laurent's smile never reached her eyes. Then we'll need to reassess whether your position here is still necessary. Budget cuts, you understand. In that moment, Sofia faced a choice that reached far beyond music. This was about her dignity, her identity, the parts of herself she had carefully hidden away. This was about standing up or backing down. The grand hall filled with the competition's participants, judges, and patrons, their evening attire glittering under crystal chandeliers. In the wings, Sofia stood alone, still in her gray uniform, the name tag S. Reyes pinned to her chest like a scarlet letter identifying her as outsider, as other. Madame Laurent tapped the microphone, her practiced smile gleaming. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a slight change to our program tonight. Our scheduled violinist had an unfortunate emergency. She paused, her voice taking on a theatrical quality. However, in the spirit of our community outreach initiatives, we have a special alternative performance. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as Madame Laurent continued. One of our maintenance staff has volunteered to demonstrate how music touches all lives, regardless of background or training. The introduction hung in the air like a veiled insult as Sofia walked onto the stage, the spotlight harsh against her simple clothes. A few titters of laughter floated from the back of the room. Christopher stood near the curtain, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk playing at his lips like a cat who'd trapped a mouse for its own amusement. Sofia stood center stage, the Academy's Stradivarius having been hastily prepared for her use, a decision that had nearly given the curator a heart attack. The magnificent instrument seemed almost to mock her in its perfection, its history, its unattainable status. For 15 years, she had played only in empty rooms or on her grandmother's worn violin, never like this, never with judgment waiting to fall on her like an executioner's blade. Her hands trembled slightly as she raised the violin to her chin. In the front row, Dr. Blackwell leaned toward his companion with a stage whisper. This should be entertaining, if nothing else. Sofia closed her eyes, shutting out the world that had tried so hard to erase her. In the darkness behind her eyelids, she found herself sitting beside her grandfather, an old man with calloused fingers who had once played with symphony orchestras in Mexico City before immigrating to America. Music isn't about who you are to the world, her grandfather had told her. It's about who you are when the world falls away. Sofia's bow touched the strings, and the first notes of Paganini's Caprice No. 24 filled the hall, not the hesitant attempts they had expected, but confident, masterful tones that commanded attention. Sofia's bow moved with precision and passion, telling a story through music that she had never been allowed to tell in words. The whispers died. The smirks froze. 300 breathing souls fell completely silent as the piece progressed through its demanding technical passages. Sofia's body swayed with the changing moods, her face transformed by the music flowing through her. The playful sections danced with whimsical grace, the thundering crescendos resonated against the very foundations of the hall. In the third row, a renowned violinist who served as head judge wiped away tears. At the back, several competitors exchanged glances of disbelief and admiration. Madame Laurent's face had lost all color. Christopher stood rigid, his knuckles white as he gripped the curtain. And Daniel watched with quiet vindication, a witness to truth revealing itself note by perfect note. When Sofia played the final flourish, the hall remained suspended in silence for 3 heartbeats. Then it erupted. The applause began hesitantly at first, as if the audience couldn't quite believe what they had witnessed, before swelling into a standing ovation. Calls of "Brava!" echoed through the hall, bouncing off marble columns and crystal chandeliers. People who moments before had been prepared to politely endure a maintenance worker's amateur attempt were now on their feet, their faces alight with genuine emotion. Sofia stood motionless for a moment, overwhelmed by the response. When she finally lowered the violin and offered a small, humble bow, the applause intensified. Nikolai Zerdov, a legendary violinist who chaired the competition jury, made his way to the stage as Sofia attempted to slip backstage. "Wait," he called, his authoritative voice cutting through the applause. "Young lady, where did you study?" Sofia turned back, the spotlight still harsh against her uniform. "I didn't, sir. Not formally." The murmurs resumed as Nikolai approached her. "That's impossible. Your technique, your interpretation." "My grandfather taught me," Sofia said softly, her voice somehow carrying throughout the now silent hall. Carlos Reyes. Recognition dawned in Nikolai's eyes. Carlos Reyes? The Carlos Reyes who was concertmaster of the Mexico City Philharmonic in the 1980s. Sofia nodded. He raised me after my parents died. We couldn't afford conservatory tuition, but he taught me everything he knew. Madame Laurent stepped forward, her professional mask firmly back in place. How fascinating! What a wonderful human interest story. It's not a story, Sofia replied quietly. It's my life. The dignity in her voice silenced Madame Laurent more effectively than any sharp retort could have. I was accepted to the Royal Academy 15 years ago, Sofia continued, looking directly at Christopher now. But my grandfather had a stroke that same week. I stayed to care for him. By the time he passed, there were medical bills, and the opportunity was gone. Nikolai nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. So you took a job here to stay close to music? Yes. Sofia's simple answer contained volumes about sacrifice, about dreams deferred but not abandoned, about finding ways to remain connected to what you love even when the path forward seems blocked. In that moment, standing in her uniform under the unforgiving spotlight, Sofia Reyes became more than just the woman who cleaned their halls. She became undeniably, irrevocably human in their eyes. The elegant reception hall buzzed with excitement as Sofia stood surrounded by competition participants who had never before noticed her existence. Their eyes, once sliding past her uniform as if she were part of the furniture, now sought her out with eager curiosity and newfound respect. Your execution of the 10th variation was extraordinary, remarked a young violinist from Germany. Such precision without sacrificing emotion. Sofia accepted the praise with quiet grace, neither shrinking from it nor reveling in it. Across the room, Madame Laurent moved through the crowd with mechanical precision, her professional smile strained as she fielded questions about the remarkable discovery in their midst. Of course we recognized her potential, Madame Laurent insisted to a major donor. Our community outreach programs are designed precisely to nurture such hidden talents. Nearby, Christopher stood alone by the refreshment table, his usual circle of admirers noticeably absent. He watched as his most promising students gathered around Sofia, eyes shining with a kind of genuine admiration no credentials could command. Daniel approached Sofia with 2 glasses of water, offering her one. I told you they'd be amazed, he said quietly. Thank you for speaking up, Sofia replied. Not many people would have. Before Daniel could respond, Nikolai Zerdov rejoined them, now accompanied by Elena Vasquez, the director of the Iberian-American Music Initiative. Ms. Reyes, Elena began, our organization believes that talent should never be limited by circumstance. We've been searching for someone to lead our community strings program, someone who understands both musical excellence and real-world barriers. Sofia's eyes widened slightly as she realized what was being offered. The position would include teaching and performing, Nikolai added. Your story, and your extraordinary talent, could inspire countless young people who believe certain doors are closed to them. As they spoke, Sofia noticed Dr. Blackwell watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. The power dynamic in the room had shifted irrevocably, like tectonic plates after an earthquake, leaving everyone to navigate unfamiliar terrain. 3 months later, Sofia walked through the same hallways she had once cleaned, now carrying sheet music instead of cleaning supplies. The transformation wasn't dramatic or instantaneous. No fairy tale ending where the janitor became a princess overnight. Reality was more nuanced, more meaningful. She still wore simple clothes, though no longer a uniform. Her new position with the Iberian-American Music Initiative's Strings for All program gave her the chance to work with students from backgrounds like her own, talented kids for whom traditional paths seemed impossible. As she passed the recital hall, she nodded to Madame Laurent, who returned the gesture with a tight smile. Their relationship had evolved into something resembling mutual respect, if not warmth. Some lessons were learned slowly, if at all. In the East practice room, 8 teenagers waited for her, their faces a mix of hopeful and guarded. They came from neighborhoods where music programs had been cut, where violins were luxuries beyond reach. My grandfather used to say that music isn't about who you are to the world, Sofia told them as she picked up her violin. No longer her grandfather's worn instrument, but not the Academy's Stradivarius either. Something in between, much like Sofia herself. It's about who you are when the world falls away. She began to play, just as she had that night, not to prove anything, but because music was her truth. As her students watched, their eyes widening at what was possible, Sofia finally understood. Sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply being who you are, without apology, in a world that tried to make you invisible. As Sofia's story reminds us, true talent doesn't always announce itself with credentials and pedigrees. Sometimes it waits quietly in the shadows, in the hands that serve rather than command, in the hearts that have learned resilience through sacrifice. How many Sofias walk among us, unnoticed? How many gifts remain hidden because we're too quick to judge by appearances, too comfortable in our assumptions about who belongs where? Perhaps the most beautiful music comes from the most unexpected places, if only we have the wisdom to listen.